Meeting of the Mobile Manufactured Home Advisory Council. So before we get started, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 10:31, I understand that there's a lot of folks that would like to have commentary today. So if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to move item 2, comments or concerns of any person present, to after item 5, which is the reports from the state agencies. Does anyone have an issue with that?
Nope.
Now, I don't know if any comments or something you want, some of the state folks to hear, and hopefully they'll stay on after their updates. And then we'll take comment after item 5, if that works for everybody.
Can we just hold on? I'm missing a bunch of people, right? Or am I not?
Well, we have 7 people
No.
for a quorum
Okay.
now.
Okay.
All right, so if everyone's on board with that, we're going to move item 2 after item 5. So item 1 is minutes of the previous meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second from someone?
Yeah, so moved. Dave Delory.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Second.
do I have a second? Mark Asney is a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? No abstentions. Motion is carried. The minutes of the February 28th meeting are approved. So skipping over item 2 for the moment, number 3 is DCP complaint and inspection reports. So Manufactured Home Park Council investigation reports. Do I have someone from DCP here ready to give that report?
Yes, it's Pamela Brown, the Director of Investigations.
Hi,
Jennifer.
Pamela. Thanks
Hi,
for
all.
being here. You have the floor.
I have you seen the report? Are there any questions for me? That's generally how we review the report. Other than to tell you that we have a total of 9 cases, so 6 remain open and 3 were closed.
Can you? I know you can't give details. Could you just give us a summary of what the complaints are?
They're basically typical. I should say that they're pretty routine, whether it's a deficiency by the landlord and its maintenance of the property, or sometimes it's a landlord-tenant dispute, which we did have based on increased rent. However, we found it to be within the statutory limits, and we refer that person to their local fair rent commission. And another dispute of facts, which is, I'm talking about the closed cases, where there was an issue with the sewer, but the sewer company was called out and found no problems. And the last one, let me just jump over here. Complaints of feral cats, and when our investigator went out, there were no cats found, and blighted properties, but there were no issues found on the park at the time of inspection.
Does anyone have any questions for Pamela?
There's a member of the public attending, Dan Billings, has a question related to one of the complaints. I don't know if you want to, if Pam's going to stay long enough for him to be heard later, or if you want to have him bring it up.
We
now.
have to. Yeah, I think he'd have to be heard.
I will try to stay on as long as I possibly can today.
I think we'll get there shortly. All right. Thank you, Pamela.
I'm sorry. I put my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess I don't want to drag this out, but I guess there are 2 comments I want to make, and I sort of they've gotten made before at various times. One is a formatting comment on this. It may be that others have figured out how to print this out in a readable size, but I haven't. And if there is any way either that somebody offline can explain to me how to do that, or if there's any way, Pamela, that the report can be written in a way so you can print it out, so I can print it out on paper, but with some sort of reasonable type size. That would make it a lot easier. So that's just one comment. The second thing is, and this has come up before, I understand that for pending cases, the department does not want to give out all the information about the case. And we've talked about trying to sort of categorize what the cases generally are about. But in looking at the categorization of the pending cases, it is so general that it doesn't give any feel at all for what the case is about. And I just think for our purposes, it helps to know enough. I'm not asking for great detail about the case or that's individualized in a very unique way, but we need to know more than it's a dispute between the resident and the park owner. And they're all disputes between the resident and the park owner. And so something that is reasonably specific about the nature of the dispute, I think we need that so we can understand what's going on. And so I've sort of made this request before, and I just want to keep it up there because I think each time I see a report, I realize how little I can understand in terms of the information it's providing. And so I guess I would again make that request to the department.
Thank you, Rafi. Pamela, do you have anything to add to that? And I would ask, there's a little thing where you can raise your hand at the top button, and that's how I'm going to take people as I see the little hand raised. So if you have a question, just hit the little hand raise thing, because I can't, my eyes can't see everybody all at once, and some folks are not even up on the screen. So Pamela, anything to add briefly?
No, I will take the last comment into consideration. Rafi, I will see what I can do about the report. In looking at it, I do see it says dispute of facts. And from our end, and you've been here for a while, you know, they're pretty much routine, the same thing that we're looking at, but I know you want to look at specifics for each park as they're listed for the open cases, but we have to be limited and sensitive to these are open cases, but I'll see whatever tweaks we can make. Because those are coming for formatted issues within the system. And if we can maybe break those down, we'll see if that's possible. May not happen by the next time we meet, but we'll certainly consider it along the way. Very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any hands raised, so we're going to move on to item 4, which is
You're not looking at my hand. You're not looking at my hand.
Oh, I see you now. I don't know why it didn't pop up top. Sorry, Mark.
No problem.
I apologize.
You know what? It's a story of my life that a woman doesn't recognize me. So I'm not going to believe her. I understand what Rafi's saying. I just wanted to just to say really for all of us, this isn't just for owners, that we really should just be trying to focus on items that are constantly happening or that are bigger, that affect the industry, not necessarily that somebody called because their one septic tank is not being pumped or there's cats. I mean, do we really want to talk about cats? I mean, these aren't things that are affecting the industry. So I just want to be careful that we don't drill down too granular, that I really would like to stay at a 10,000 feet, just so we're talking about things that have an effect on the entire industry. Of course, if there's a real emergency, the DCP is already involved. They know what they're doing, that they're the ones going out to the parks, they're licensing us. So Rafi and I go back and forth probably since I've been on the council on this one little topic, but since he was willing to say something, I just wanted to just go back and just say that I just want it to be on a higher level, that we don't need to know the individual stuff, because I just think it feels one-sided if you're just focusing on these little knick-knack stuff. If somebody has a real gripe, man, we really want to know it. If there's a real impact on a community, we surely want to know it. If there's something that is impacting a septic system or whatever, and there's a way for the council to get involved and maybe help. I know Dave talked about money for infrastructure. Those are things I'd love to peel off and then a complaint to see if we can help. But I don't really want to sit here and talk about somebody that had cats in the community. It just doesn't, I don't think it serves the council very well. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, moving on, unless anybody else has their hand raised and I can't see it, I'm not seeing anybody. So we'll move on to item 4, which is DCP legal, and that is item A1, update on legal issues. We tabled this from the February meeting. Discussion with DCP legal on how legal issues arising from the inspections are addressed. Is there someone here that can speak to that?
That would be me. Good morning. This is Cynthia Fernandez from DCP
Oh, hi.
Legal.
Yeah. I
How
knew
are
you were
you?
here. Thanks.
Right. So I wasn't sure if you guys wanted me to review specifically section 2171 that now provides for the $500 civil penalty, the $500 fine for violations that are not remedied within 30 days. Is that exactly what you were referring to in that section, or, violations in general?
I personally would like to hear of any updated statutes. As long as everybody else is on board with that, I'd like to hear about it.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Sure.
yeah, so general statutes, section 2171 now gives the department an additional enforcement tool, so that it's based on inspections, and wherever there's a failed inspection and violations are found by the department, a notice of violation along with an order is issued to the park owner. So what it entails is an inspection, a violation is found, and then that notice is issued, but it also now includes a warning that if that violation or repair that needs to be made is not remedied within 30 days of the inspection, on or about 30 days, a $500 centralized infractions bureau ticket will be issued by the department. So the CIB pretty much is the same department through judicial that issues traffic tickets. And these tickets pretty much look like a traffic ticket, just like, you would receive on the road from a police officer. And, that once those tickets are issued, they're processed directly through the Centralized Infractions Bureau. The department is not involved at that point. It's now, at that point, it would be up to the park owner to proceed to judicial and either pay or plead the ticket. So that means they either pay the $500, fine and end it there, or they can plead not guilty and go to court and argue their case before a judge. So far, I think last year it was that this passed, so far we've issued about a dozen of these. I've seen pretty prompt responses from the parks when I've issued the notice of violation along with the inspection report and, the warning letter stating that a ticket will be issued. Most of the parks so far have responded pretty promptly with repairs, invoices, pictures of repairs, and that's enough to get the case, the inspection closed as having been remedied at that point. And I haven't seen this so far yet, but we did just roll this out pretty recently. If there is a case where, a park owner will ignore this notice and not do the repair within the 30 days, we can continue with an actual enforcement action against the park through the department. It would just have to be based on a reinspection of, existing violations, because we can't use the same evidence that's used in issuing a CIB ticket. We can't have two bites at the apple, in other words. If there's an inspection violation and a ticket is issued, it goes through CIB, and for us, it's over. If there continues to be a violation upon reinspection, then we can continue with our own DCP enforcement action. But like I said, we just rolled this out pretty recently and I haven't seen that yet.
Great, thank you. So I have 4 people that have 3 people now. Somebody went away. 4 people that have their hand raised. So I'm gonna ask them to speak, but quick question. So I wanna understand this better. So if DCP issues a notice of violation in order to correct something within 30 days, but the park owner gets back in touch with DCP and says, hey, I got your order, we're going to correct this, but it may take more than 30 days. Does that ticketing system go in automatically, or
no. Yeah, no. So this
I
is
work in
totally
land use, right? So there's appeal periods for everything. So that's sort of what I'm asking about.
no. So Okay, so two questions there. So once a CIB ticket is issued, they're not issued automatically. I personally would be the one issuing the ticket
Gotcha.
from DCP. There's still room for common sense, for issues like in the winter, there's potholes. You don't have access to asphalt until the spring. Clearly it's a repair that can be made during the winter. So we're not going to issue a ticket based on something that is impossible to repair in that time frame. In terms of a right of appeal, CIB tickets are not appealable through DCP. They're only processed through judicial, through the Centralized Infractions Bureau. So once that ticket is issued from DCP, it's out of our hands, and the park owner would have to process that ticket through the CIB, which is through the courts.
Thank you.
So that, if it's an action directly from DCP, there's a right of appeal.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, and thank you, because you had made that clear before, once the ticket is issued, DCP is out. I just wanted to sort of see what the discretion is for actually issuing that ticket, and I think you just answered that. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back. Mark, you were up first. Do you no longer want to speak? Mark?
Oh,
Asnes?
no, actually I do, but when I turned on the mic, it took my hand away. So, my first question is, what kind of infraction would trigger this, this fine? Can you give me an example? You said there's been about a dozen, tickets that have been handed out.
No, not a dozen tickets, a dozen of these notices based on
Notices,
failures.
okay,
Right. I haven't issued any tickets based on this yet.
okay.
So according to the statute, it's really any violation of any provision of statute and regulation pertaining to mobile home parks. So whether it's, an expired license that's not posted properly, but, an active license exists, but the expired license is still up, whether it's, lot maintenance or anything that applies to an inspection. It would be a notice of violation, just like was going out before. Now it just has, the teeth behind it of this $500 ticket.
All right. The only thing I would state, there are certain things that show up on when inspection happens, and I have one that's been ongoing, that the inspector noted that one of the homes, the skirting was in disrepair. And I don't have control of that. I mean, that's a homeowner issue, although I have requested that the homeowner make those repairs. I can't really, it's not something I really can enforce, other than say, the state of Connecticut DCP is requesting that be taken care of, but that's that person's home. And so there's certain things, that, I think DCP needs to be aware of, that there's only certain things that we have control over.
Right. And the tickets really would be based on what's specifically listed in statute as the owner's responsibility.
I would just hope that it's used judiciously, where there's some type of imminent either danger, harm, or, I mean, I have to believe that this would be something that would be fairly serious, that would need to be done within 30 days, and that would require this type of warning or notice, that DCP would go as far as sending out this notice for a $500 fine, because this is something, I would say fairly serious.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. Mark Asnes, I'm back to you. You originally had your hand raised first.
I'm sorry, Miriam. Do you want me to let you go first?
No, I think it's been said.
No, I waited for
Go
Mark
for
to
it,
go.
Mark. It's
All
all
right,
right.
so Mark,
I
and then
waited
Ray,
for-
and then Miriam. That's who I
No,
have.
it's okay.
I'm done. It's all right.
I waited for Mark to go because I knew he was gonna ask the same question. So I guess, Mark brought up the best point, which is that majority of the issues that we have relate to having to police residents from washing their houses, fixing their skirting, not having garbage outside, And for us, we have to issue a material rule violation, and then we have to wait 30 days, and we have to go to court. I mean, so here we are, where again, the community owner has been penalized now with a ticket, literally a ticket, a $500 fine. So I would like to say that we would like the same authority through whatever statute or regulation that we could get, that we have the right to issue a fine to a resident that also doesn't follow the rules and make corrective action in 30 days. Why should I have to go to court and spend $1,000 to get somebody to fix their skirting when you guys can just come and tell me I got to fix a pothole, or I've got to cut a limb down, or I've got to put my license up, and if I don't, it's $500. Shouldn't it be reciprocal that we can also issue fines? And for the same reason, most of the communities that look terrible because the residents refuse to follow the rules of the park. And we are left with only going to court to rectify those issues, which is cost prohibitive. And so if everyone was okay with me, I can work with Rafi and we can come up with a system that would allow us to fine residents under the same type of atmosphere that the DCP is doing against community owners. Why is it always so one-sided? Anyway, Miriam, is that what you wanted to say?
Thank you, Mark. That's
You're
exactly,
welcome.
yeah.
Add on to that is, the statute allows DCP to fine owners. Why can't DCP fine individual unit owners? And then those folks would have to go to court. That's just another thought out there. So, okay, Rafi, you're next.
Well, now I'm not quite sure where to go with this, but maybe I've got two things here, but let me start with the one I was going to question. I don't quite understand the interrelationship between the fines and the enforcement. In other words, presumably the goal of a fine is to get compliance with some kind of an order from DCP. And what I guess I'm just not clear on is if DCP turns this over to some other process. I think what was said was that it's sort of beyond the control of DCP at that point. Then my question is, what is going on with the enforcement of whatever the problem was? Under some circumstances, I mean, somebody might prefer to pay. I understand that $500 is a substantial amount. Somebody might prefer to pay $500. Or it might drag out over an extended period of time. And so my question is DCP enforcing? I mean, the goal is the enforcement, not the fine. And I understand, and I can understand from a park owner perspective. I mean, the idea is fix the problem. So what happens during this time period while a ticket has been issued? Presumably the ticket's not issued unless the owner has failed to comply. So what happens?
Right. Right. And that's what I was explaining earlier, is that if let's say that they don't comply on reinspection, or that 30-day time frame passes and there's no repair made, we would continue, well, the ticket would be issued, and then the department would continue to work on an enforcement action based on the lack of compliance with statute, which still remains. So it doesn't stop there. In terms of the enforcement of the actual ticket and the process, that's out of DCP's hands. That goes through the CIB. But in terms of continuing to work with the park, or, impose whatever we can to make the park come into compliance, that continues. That we don't just end the effort to enforce the regulations and statutes at the park with the issuance of a ticket. It's just an additional enforcement tool at that point. We would still continue to work with the park to get them into compliance.
And is the ticket a flat amount? Like all tickets are
$500.
$500? It's not like,
Right.
not graded based on the nature of the violation.
Right, exactly. It's written as a $500 ticket.
Okay. The second thing I would say, this would be the last thing because Mark brought this up. I do not think it's a good idea to impose this on park residents. But I think that the question But it's a legitimate question, in my opinion, as to what is the overall structure. I mean, I know that in a number of parks, there have been complaints. I mean, these are not necessarily the parks of people on the council, but that there have been complaints that it has taken months and months and months to get compliance. And I mean, that has been an actual issue in some parks. And we know of from past years, some where the department was still 2 years after the initial orders was still trying to get compliance. So to me, the question that we should think about from a policy perspective is how is that accomplished? I mean, I do think there's a difference between how a department would should enforce against an owner something that is actually the resident's responsibility and not the owner's responsibility. So it doesn't follow the ticketing is the way to go. But I just think there's maybe a bigger issue here about how we avoid situations where orders go particularly for extended periods without actual compliance. And hopefully we've reduced that. But I'm not even clear how the ticketing system, I mean, my assumption is, I don't know, when you run something as a parking ticket and someone takes an appeal, I'm not sure how that plays out in the parking ticket context and what that means in terms, for example, whether the DCP inspector has to appear at a hearing or not, and the hearing's not being conducted by DCP, but by judicial. It just seems like I guess I'd like to hear us discuss at some point a little more about how the whole process works within the context of getting enforcement as promptly as possible when DCP is directed compliance.
Okay, thanks, Rafi. Dave, you're next. I see your little, when you're done, if you could unraise your hand, that would be great.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
I'll try to keep this brief.
You got it, Rafi.
Don't the parks have, as far as, violations and having DCP enforcement get involved in this, is there anything in state law or regulations that prevents a park, for example, if they're not parking correctly, their garbage is not put in the right place, or their cat's running loose, that you can issue a fine to them? Is there anything that prevents you from doing that? I guess I'm addressing the park owners. And then for Cynthia, I'm curious about the effort that you described. Are any of those things, those inspection reports and potentially a fine that you issue notices for, do any of them arise from the complaint process, or are they from the DCP inspection process, or both?
No, right. These are based on inspections, not the complaint process.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other raised hands at the moment. So I'm going to move on to item 5, report from CHFA, and Ryan is here.
Hey, this is Colette. I don't have any updates on the park purchase program this quarter. Brian, I'm not sure if you have single family updates.
I do have a single family
Great.
update. So let's see what we have here. We have received 10 new applications for the purchase program since our last meeting, which brings the total number of purchase applications since March of 2021 up to 84. We didn't have any closings since our last meeting in the last 3 months. However, 5 loans are currently in process for closing. The total closed loans since March of 2021 is now 14 for the purchase program. For the refi program, we haven't received any new applications for that since the last update, and the total applications for that is still 16. We did close, however, one of our refinance applications since the last meeting. So the total number of refi closings for the program is now 6 since March of 2021.
Well, I think that's good news, right, Brian, that you've had 10 applications since our last meeting in February?
Yes. Yeah, that is a good jump up.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
And do you feel like 5 of those are going to close? The ones
I would hope.
so
I
far?
certainly would hope.
Okay, good.
And there's also been discussions. We're trying to make some improvements to the program. I know my director, Lisa Hensley, is going to be presenting to the board soon, but one of the proposals for improvement is one of the constant feedbacks, that we've heard often is the down payment hurdle for the purchase program. So we have some proposals to maybe decrease that down payment percentage. And if it gains some traction, maybe we'll be implementing some criteria that'll make it a little easier for borrowers to get approved in the future.
All right, well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for CHFA?
Brian, I'm sorry, Rafi, you had your hand up. Go ahead, buddy.
No, go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
I just don't remember. Is there a minimum year? The way that the regular lenders do it, they cap it at 76, but now they've actually started to go a little bit older. Do you have if someone's buying a used home, do you have a year that you have to stay at the HUD level to 76, or would you guys lend to a home that was a 72 or a 70? Do you know?
Ooh, I don't know that offhand. I have to research that and
Yeah,
respond to you, Mark, on that one.
the lenders used to basically say it's got to be a HUD built home.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and that's really the majority. But we still have some, older homes that are
Some older
changing
homes.
hands in the community. And I do know priority funding in Connecticut has started to reduce started to allow older homes. I think they do increase the down payment percentage a little bit, but at least gives the people some opportunity to get lending where they weren't before.
Okay. All right, Mark, I might reach out to you to, kind of help facilitate your question, but I'll take some notes here and see what I can figure out, but I might circle back with you.
Yeah.
Do I have your email? Is it on the
Yeah, it should
like
be on the
the
distribution list, but
okay, cool.
yeah, just
All right, cool.
Brian, Mark Berkowitz, hi.
Hey, Mark.
Are you, those applications, the 10 applications, are they coming predominantly from one or two communities? Are they spread out amongst a number of different communities?
I believe they're spread out. I have to do a deeper dive and look at, all the property addresses, but I believe they're spread out. When I quickly looked at a glance, I thought I saw multiple towns, but
Okay.
I can check that out for you, Mark.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
Sure. You got it, Mark. Towns. All right, cool. All right.
Well, my hand's up, so I'm going to go ahead.
Oh, Rafi.
I have a question about the park purchase program. My impression is that the two primary potential funders of park purchases would be in Connecticut would be either CHFA, which has its own program, or probably ROC, which comes from out of state. I'm wondering, has CHFA put together a comparison between its requirements, which would be things like interest rates or preconditions or any of those other things that are parts of the CHFA rules, a comparison between what it requires and what ROC requires, so that we could sort of address the question, is how competitive are the two programs with each other? So I'd be interested if either if it has been done, if we could get a copy, or if it hasn't been done, if CHFA would look at that, because it might in the end result in CHFA making modifications of its own program.
So Rafi, I don't know if you were one of the people from the council that was involved while we were designing the program, but as you know, CHFA has not ever done this product before. And since it was an area we didn't have experience in, we did look to the ROC requirements for a model. We are also statutory limited. We have a limitation that we can't fully fund. We can only fund up to 80%, I believe it is. So we also knew that they would need to seek other financing. So we did make sure that our limits would match within ROC's limits, so that if they needed to find additional financing, if there wasn't enough equity in the deal, that they could look to another viable lender that does that in Connecticut, to your point. So, but we have, to answer your question, I don't have a comparison, but you know, they were, it was reviewed when we were designing our program.
Okay, no, and I was aware of that at the time. I don't recall ever seeing a piece of paper that made actual comparisons. I mean, I know there was discussion.
I don't have a piece of paper like that.
Is there any possibility that CHFA might generate one?
Yeah, I was actually, this is Liz. I was actually going to say, is this something that could perhaps be put together for our next meeting?
I can't answer that. I'd have to talk to my supervisor to see if that's something that they'd want me to work on.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. You're wanting me to compare the two programs, but again, they both have limits that are workable within. I'm not really following what the request is.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out I mean, part of what you said seems to be that there's a possibility out there of getting financing through both programs, like this financing, partial financing through CHFA with sort of supplemental financing through ROC. I'm really just trying to understand, you know, now that we have a statute in place on park purchase, what kind of options of financing will residents have with the individual purchase program? Particularly for refinancing, CHFA has offered very favorable rates. I mean, one of the things that have puzzled us on the refinancing for individual purchase and why relatively few people are using it. But
Rafi, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to, I have 3 people following you and we're getting really tough on time. So one thing I could do, Colette, is I could follow up with you, you know, offline, so to speak, and we can maybe talk about it. I think I know what Rafi's looking for, but I'd like to move on to the next person because we have a long meeting today. So Rafi, I think we're good with that. So I want to move on to Ben. You are next, if you would like to speak. Oh, you're muted, Ben. Am I the only one that can't hear Ben?
No, I can't hear. We can't hear him.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
No, Ben, you're
It
not.
definitely says your microphone's muted.
Yes. Yeah, it shows that you're muted, Ben. Rachel,
But he's making a great point, though. He's making a very great point.
No. I think it might be, Ben, it might be your computer. Rochelle, is there any way you can try to unmute him?
I can't do that. No. I can't do that. He's not muted anymore, so it might be
okay.
Microphone issue on
I think it's yours, Ben. If you want to type something in with the chat, I can get back to that. But I'm going to move on to Dave D, and I'm going to try to limit these guys to just a few minutes, okay? Because we have to keep moving.
Mine will be very brief on this. Back in the spring, I attended a couple meetings of a banking subcommittee on trying to stimulate additional private lending. I don't know, I never heard anything come out of it, but I thought somebody was going from that subcommittee or the staff or somebody was going to reach out to CHFA. This was through, I think the Mark, you were there. I think the guy's name was Jason.
Yeah, Jason Doucette. Yeah, Jason Doucette.
Yeah. So I wonder if anybody from CHFA had any outreach as a result of that process.
I believe.
I don't. None of that's sounding familiar to me, but maybe on the single family side.
I believe my director, Lisa Hensley, was on some calls and some meetings with Jason Doucette and some others. I do recall her talking about that subcommittee, and out of that came some request to maybe try to revamp our program for the purchase and the refinance of mobile manufactured homes. So that's, partly what's kind of led to us proposing some changes to the board, which will be coming soon, to make it a little easier to qualify for these loans. One of the biggest hurdles being the down payment criteria that's currently in place. So hopefully out of that will come some changes to the program to make it easier to qualify.
Okay. Thank you. So Dave, if you're done, if you could unraise your hand, I have Mark Asnes up next.
So I think we've been flip-flopping between park purchase program, which is what Rafi was talking about, and then
Yeah.
Brian's talking about, purchases of homes, and I'm not sure actually which one Dave was referring to. So
I don't know either. I
just-
was just speaking from what I could say. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's good. And just in what Rafi was talking about, just so I understand. So the state of Connecticut has a program to purchase parks. However, am I to understand that, because again, the way that the ROC works is they loan up to 110%, right? So they finance a certain percentage and then they go out and then get a local bank to make up the difference. And that's all fine. But I don't think the ROC is making up the difference between what CHFA is doing to get to that limit. Am I correct, Colette, that you guys you're financing up to 80%? And when you say that they have the ability to go out and get the rest of it, you're not saying the rest of it's through ROC. Are you saying the rest of it's through some other private lender?
It's really up to the applicant, the mortgagor, to figure out how to complete their financing stack.
Yeah. So, and again, this is no slam on CHFA, but that'll never happen because most banks aren't going to have a second mortgage. You're not going to get funding from the state, and then the bank's going to be a second in place for the additional 20 or 30%. So I feel like we really need to look at that program. Rafi, just how does the state really ever participate or get to compete to get that? Because I would honestly like to have more than one company always get the be a monopoly. So I would love the state of Connecticut to help finance these things, but the residents are never going to be able to make up the 20% because they don't have any ownership. They're not going to go and put their name on they're not signing for anything. They're not on the hook for the loan. So I'm not exactly sure how they would ever get the remaining percentage unless they were willing to put the money up like I do, right? So most of my loans are 60-40 or 70-30, but I put up the equity for that 30%, and then I'm signing personally for the 70%, right, that the bank's giving me. I sign for it personally. So the residents aren't ever doing that, and they're not asked to do that. So I don't think the CHFA program will ever work because there's no way for them to make up that 20 or 30%. Might make sense to everybody? Is that, or no, am I just talking gibberish?
No, I get that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So if anybody doesn't have any other questions for CHFA, I'm going to move on to, I think we can cover old business very quickly. So I'm going to do old business, then we'll do comments or concerns of the public. So the first one was public education and promotion, and that's a visit to a mobile home park spring 2024. And I want to give you an update. I did visit with some communities at their 3 parks in Montville, Hillcrest, Millwood, and their park on Rainbow Drive. And they're very happy to have us do a field trip. They have several under construction or will be under construction at Millwood. And I hope now to have it for the fall. There's no way to get that done for January. And especially during the short session, if we want to get some of our legislators there, that's not going to be the time. But of course, it's an election year. It's never going to be the time, but I'll try my best to get that done. House on the Hill, I don't know that we really had a lot of time to work on that for 2025, and perhaps we can address that at the next meeting. Mark, do you have anything on that? Okay, so let's table that to the next meeting. And then discussion of formation of combined legislative, educational, and finance policy committee. I want to table that discussion for right now. We can have it after comments or concerns of any person present. So what the first person I'm going to call on is that member of the public that had a question for DCP, so that in case the folks from Pamela has to leave, she can at least hear this question. So who is the member of the public? Could you please raise your hand? Daniel Billings? So
Yeah,
I also want to add, we're going to have to limit these to start to like 3 to 5 minutes tops, guys, because, and people can go back. We'll start over, but I want to try to start very briefly with public comments, trying to limit it to 3 minutes. So Daniel, you're up.
yeah, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good, because I had to call in separately to get the voice to work for me.
Okay.
Just a quick question are there any regulations against a park charging different prices for the same lots, and in some cases the exact same lot? So if it changed hands, say during a month or two after a new lease year started, can they charge a higher rate?
You mean for separate lease areas in the same park? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, we own our homes and we rent the lots.
Right.
So if one homeowner sells and they had just started a new lease year, can they raise the rent on the new owner coming in?
Well, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if that's a DCP question. Maybe perhaps one of the park owners could comment on that.
That would be great.
Who would like to? Raise your hand up. Mark, either Mark, Miriam, why don't you go ahead, and if you can answer that, that would be great. You're muted, Mary.
Okay.
There you go.
So your lot runs are to be consistent throughout your property, Mr. Billings. However, that doesn't mean that all parks are on an exact calendar year, all right? So that if you have a park, I have some, in which for whatever reason, once upon a time, you have a scattered system of lot dates, their renewal dates coming up, that's where you might see that fluctuation change.
No, that's not
Is
our
that not
case.
what you're asking, or are you just asking?
Well, no, that doesn't happen here. All of our leases expire on March 31st.
All right, so the situation is such that you need to give someone a lease, and it's a 12, let's say it's a 12-month lease, which typically most of our leases are 12 months, correct? So let's say your leases across your park come in as a calendar year, they start January 1. Let's say your lot rents are $500 a month starting January 1. You sell your house in March, okay, or June, pick a date. That person is coming in, all right? Now, in order to give them a 12-month lease, all right, that's not going to get to your same calendar year of January. I can't give less than a 12-month lease. You get that?
I do.
Okay, so there is where you're going to see a fluctuation of lot rents until it catches up. I typically will try to give somebody like an 18, let's say somebody sells in June. I can't do a 6-month lease. I have to give a minimum of a 12-month. I can give more. So where I can, I will try to give an 18-month lease or whatever to bring them up to that same calendar as all my other residents.
That makes sense. Thank you.
That would be great if it worked for us here, but I find that when I moved in, and I know people have done this year as well, when they move in, if it's halfway in the year, they get a 6-month lease. And then at the end of the 6 months, they raise the rent.
I mean,
I don't know where,
but that really wasn't the question. My real question was, can they charge higher rents for different lots all at the same time? all on the same schedule.
Right. I would say we do not ever do that.
Okay.
So whether you have the ocean view or a lot that's, 125% the size of your neighbors, it's going to be the same lot.
No, all.
I understand you're saying it doesn't work that way.
No, they're all 5,500 square feet, basically. In some cases, I've known someone moved out in April after the new lease started. The new
Right.
tenant comes in and the rent goes up 9%, 10%.
Right, I don't
I
think.
don't have
that's
anything else to say.
within-
I don't know how that would work.
Yeah. Daniel, I
Okay.
don't,
We do have a
There's no
minimum of 12-month lease for
regulation
everybody.
for it then.
I don't think that's within the council's purview to answer that specific question. I do have, Rafi, you're up next. Do you have a different comment or do you want to comment on Mr. Billings' comment? You're muted.
Brief comment on Mr. Miller's comment. I would just say the statute requires that similar properties within the park be essentially similar rents. I don't know how that plays out with the mid-year situation, but there's no prohibition where the properties have significant differences from having different rent levels based on those differences. But my understanding is if it's the same property, then they're supposed to have the same, like same size, then they're supposed to have the same rent. I mean, there may be variations. So there may also be variations. For example, if someone goes to Fair Rent Commission, you may end up with someone who's got a different dollar amount. So
Yeah, it would be
and
helpful
I
if you
don't
could get that.
know the situation in the particular park.
Yeah. If you could get me that statute, that would be very helpful.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on. We're continuing with the public, comments or concerns of any person present. So I'm gonna ask you to raise your hand, hit your raise your hand button, and it will take you in the order. Mr. Billings, if you could unraise your hand, that would be great. And Rafi, you're all set for now, correct? Or do you have something else you want to comment on? You're muted, Rafi.
Sorry, I unraised.
All right, thanks, Pamela. Pamela's leaving the meeting. That's why I wanted to try to get the DCP question in first. Does anyone have any comments or concerns that they would like to talk about in this meeting right now? Okay. Well, I thought that was going to be longer. So moving on, item 6, again, we had discussion of formation of combined legislative, educational, and finance policy committee. I know that I'm not aware that there's been any movement, and we talked about having a subcommittee meeting, and certainly, at some point that might be, something to do. I can send out an email to everyone. This time of year is tough because people are on vacation. So maybe would the council be, open to maybe trying to get a subcommittee in the fall to form this policy.
Hi.
Yes? Oh, not you, Miriam?
No, I'm sorry. Take that back. Excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry, somebody just.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So if anyone doesn't have any comment, we're moving on to new business. I don't have any new business on the agenda. Committee reports, legislative, educational, and finance. Does anyone have any comments about any legislative, educational, or finance matters? Mark, you're up. You're muted. Mark, you're muted.
That's unlike me. But I sent out, I know I copied you, Liz, and Rafi, I'm pretty sure, maybe Dave too, I'm not sure, but our I guess, focus for the community owners for the next calendar year would be to make changes to the issue when you have a death in a mobile home, death of a mobile home owner, and the fact that it takes us 2 years to get possession of the home, and thousands of dollars while that home sits and deteriorates. So I had sent out to you guys, I think how it is today, and then what we think would be changes to the general statutes to make this easier for everybody. And although you may look at this as a community owner issue, I can assure you that having homes sit in parks in Connecticut where there's almost no availability as it is, just makes it even harder for somebody that needs an affordable house to move in. And then what happens is, because the home sits there for so long and deteriorates, that generally we end up removing the home from the site, because after 2 years, the mold and mildew and animals and everything else has, not to mention what people left in the home. So obviously we don't need to go into the details, but I guess I need to know, is the council interested in helping us achieve this goal, or should we just go about and do it on our own? Go ahead, Dave.
So Dave, you're up next. You have your hand.
I
actually
see,
raised.
I think, Mark, I don't remember you sending me anything specific on this, but I may have missed it. But I'm certain, I think the council should be helping this, because this happens where I live. I happen to know that Sun has issues. One in particular that's, I could turn around and probably throw a rock at it, where the place has been abandoned. They can't reach relatives, and it's been sitting there for a year, maybe more. They finally did resolve 4 or 5 houses down the street from me earlier this spring, and they came in and crushed it, and there'll be a new house going there eventually. So I know it's an issue. It's been an issue in a lot of places. So,
yeah, I think what you guys need to understand is we're responsible for, we literally open up probates on behalf of other people, which to me is just, a crazy thing that I should open an estate on somebody that I don't know. And then what happens is relatives sit by on the side to see how far it goes. And then when it gets to the point where there may be something in it for them, then they raise their hand and say, oh, I have claim to stuff in the house or whatever. And not to mention the fact that once you open up an estate, you're opening it up for everything, not just the home. So it opens it up to potentially pension money and stuff that may be sitting somewhere. So, we've had to battle kids after like 3 or 4 years that they just showed up out of nowhere because they didn't have the money to open the estate and was waiting for someone to open it up for them. So again, we submitted what the problem is and the suggestions that we feel would be beneficial. I'm not big on submitting things, Rafi, to legislators on how to get the ball rolling on the change, but I'm happy to resend it out to everybody. And if there's a way that somebody can help us navigate how to get this accomplished, I think if we're saying it, if Dave's saying it, it affects, who the hell wants an abandoned home for 2 years sitting next to them, right, while it deteriorates, and it doesn't help anybody. So if you're for it, it sounds like Dave is. I'd like to restart this by resending it out to you guys.
I don't know the legal ramifications, but I'm certainly for looking into it and beginning a discussion. I mean, there's one, I just thought of another one. There's one right down the street. Now, how do you address it when the rent's being paid and there's nobody there maintaining it? But that's aside. Have you guys ever looked into could you look at it on a local basis through a blight ordinance? Has that ever been tried?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz.
I'm sorry. I just want to let you know that I have Mark Berkowitz waiting. I have Rafi waiting. And I have Marcia M waiting. So, Mark, we want to talk about the blight ordinance real quick, and then I'm going to move on. The blight ordinance question from Dave.
No, we don't get a lot of help. And it's a great point. Again, it is fractionalized, right? So you may get somebody to do it, but even if they consider it blight, unless the thing's falling down and it's a health and safety hazard, you're very rarely, and then still doesn't mean that you get possession to get the I need possession to file a removal certificate. for me to remove it from the lot. If not, the town just keeps on as a tax roll, and then it just goes on. Everybody's got their hand in it. So I appreciate what you're saying, Dave, for sure, because anything that would expedite it, and maybe that could be part of the law, Dave. Maybe giving the authority to the town.
It needs to be explored and look for options that can deal with the problem. I don't know if that's the right one. We do need
Right,
to.
and I'm a municipal land use staff person, so, there's issues with the blight too. So the blight, who is the blight order issued to? The owner of the unit, the home, or the owner of the park, and that can get a little sticky, but that's something, certainly we can think about at the town level. Mark, you're up next.
Yeah, so I think, Mark, I think it would be helpful also to look at, while we're looking at legislation for, in the case where somebody passes away, also to look at the abandonment statute where someone might necessarily not have passed away, because that's also a pretty cumbersome process and it's very expensive. And it's also a situation where a home sits and deteriorates, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and it's an eyesore for the neighbors, and it's a big expense for us that unfortunately oftentimes may get passed on in lot rents and whatnot to tenants down the road. So I think while we're doing that, I think it's worthwhile to also look at the abandonment statute and see if we can facilitate that process as well.
All right, thank you. I'm actually, Rafi, I'm gonna let Marcia Stem cut you in line because we haven't heard from her yet too. So hi, Marcia.
Well, good morning.
And then Rafi, you're up next. And Mark, you're all set.
My question on abandonment, I kind of wanted to direct it to Al. Al, do you have that problem down at Ryder? Because I've seen where you've got a whole bunch of new homes going in. So what's happening different at Ryder that I can maybe use to get rid of some of these abandoned junks in my.
Yeah, we had 8 or so homes that have been not used for years. Went into probate. It went to a whole different situation with the city, and eventually we got a new lawyer, and he's somehow found a way of filing in the court system to get control of the homes. A lot of them had to be removed and new homes put in through a manufacturer.
Were they mostly?
So you were able to do it hiring a lawyer, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the lawyer found some situation that he could work with to get control of the homes.
Marcia?
So did he work with the town?
I don't know. I haven't really heard the explanation from the lawyer as far as how he resolved the situation. He just said he found a way to take care of the problem.
Huh. We'd like to meet him.
Yeah, we would.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and from a town perspective, I certainly would like to know that much. I know that the town of Ledyard has worked with a park owner on a couple of occasions to assist the park owner in having the home removed. But it was a little bit of a process, and there were a little bit of attorney's fees involved, which the park owner agreed to pay for. But it helped resolve it quicker than 2 years. And it was an abandoned home that apparently blew up from someone cooking drugs in there, and then the person left. So I think I'd be interested in knowing how the towns, from your perspective, how the towns can help you better as well. So Rafi, you're up next.
My suggestion is that this is the kind of conversation that should be referred to the new Legislative, Educational, and Finance Policy Committee. So it can be discussed sort of at the committee level. And historically, it may be worth everyone's knowing, and I think Mark Berkowitz may remember this, that the existing statute came out of the Legislative Committee of this advisory council, where we tried to figure out some way that would work both to protect the owner of the unit and to protect and to make it possible for for park owners to take control of the property. And if the feeling is that that has not worked, I mean, that's what I'm hearing today, is that people feel that doesn't work. It's actually worth knowing that that proposal that's in the statutes now came out of this advisory council. So I think my suggestion is that's a good use for the committee that you're talking about, the subcommittee, and that we should send it there maybe over the summer, or if not then in the fall, early fall, but no later than early fall, I would say. That committee could meet and talk about this and see to what extent there's consensus and looking at all these issues. So that'd be my suggestion, Liz.
Yeah, and that was my next question. So if, maybe late summer would be the time to do it, what's sort of the deadline to get it in front of a, committee?
Well, the legislature is going to come back in the first week of January. I mean, they may come back in a special session now, but basically they're off until the first week of January.
Yeah.
So in terms of getting a proposal in, it should really be done. I mean, it's going to be a new legislature, which means it's hard to get the proposals in to the right people before the legislature organizes itself. For example, you don't know who the chairs of the committees are until they meet at the beginning of January. So I would say the idea would be to have a proposal worked out by the end of the year. And I think that's not too late by any means.
I'm sorry, am I muted?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mine was muted. Miriam, you're up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really frustrated, obviously, on a couple of issues. Certainly because, again, it's 11:37. We've spent a significant amount of time today, again, talking about DCP's inspections, et cetera, et cetera. And yet I think when we get to an issue such as this, okay, which is really important, I don't know if people understand who are not park owners or managers, how crucial this is that we are able to continuously update our properties and not have them go into states of disrepair. And we talk about, we have a need here. We need to figure this out. And it's given maybe just a few minutes to discuss. I see issues such as whether it's finding a property $500, or we're talking about the inability for park owners or managers to really get after our residents, to update their homes, to keep up their homes. I'll just backtrack to that for a second. I've taken multiple people to court and have never won on repairing skirting or removing fencing or sheds or blah, 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 and have really never won the battle, and has done nothing but really cost me inordinate sums of money. And we sit here and it's like, we've got to talk about how to have the power to continue these properties looking decent. One of the reasons older parks go on the market, go to sale, and I'm sure Dave can speak about this because he's been at one of my properties that's on the market that is being sold to an investor, is because the current owners who have owned it for 20, 30 years, family businesses, cannot afford anymore to keep them up, cannot afford the legal fees to spend every time somebody decides to walk away. It costs us over 10 grand to go through an eviction, an abandonment, et cetera, never mind the monies to bring in a new home to be sold on the property. These older properties with older owners, if I may say that, do not have the financial ability to continue without help and without sort of an understanding of that. So last year it was, properties in Griswold. This year it's properties in Newtown. Middletown has been sold. Again, these are family businesses, guys, that just cannot take on these burdens over the years. And they're selling them for that reason. And so I think it's really important, this abandonment situation, or whatever we want to call it, to make things more affordable for these communities. And that's the owners.
Well said, Miriam.
I would suggest that, I don't know if we have I'm sorry, am I jumping the gun? Somebody else waiting?
Mark Berkowitz
No,
is.
go ahead, Dave, and then Mark Berkowitz is up next.
Do we need a motion to go forward with to call a subcommittee meeting or something over the summertime? I don't know how to do this.
I don't
Or
think
you
we
want
need
to
a
just,
motion. I've
I know we
added-
tossed a couple of ideas out just now. I mean, Miriam, do you have specific ideas? You said I forget what you said, but if you have specific ideas, you want to discuss them now, if you want to, make them now. I don't know. I don't know what they are.
We're coming up with ideas at Connecticut Manufactured Housing Association, and I'm not saying that having a group discussion or a small group discussion to come up with what makes sense to bring in front of the legislature is wrong, Dave. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make people understand how important this is and how, I guess, in my opinion, perhaps other things are not quite as relevant.
Right.
Like a $500 fee because I didn't post my license, this is real stuff. This is what makes people give up. This is what makes owners put them on the market, which then transcribes to problems going down the road.
Rochelle, can you remind me when the next meeting is?
It's in the end of August. I think that.
Yeah, it's
right
for August 28th.
All right. So why don't I try? If you guys would like, if someone wants to make a motion to make it official, go for it. But I think that let's try to have a policy committee meeting early August. I don't have a calendar in front of me because my phone is missing in action like it always is. So if you want to make a motion, that's fine. But then perhaps we can have some report for our August 28th meeting.
Yeah, I don't think you need a motion, Liz. I think
Okay.
just schedule a meeting at some
All right,
point.
so I'm gonna schedule a meeting, a policy committee meeting for the first or second week of August, and then we can discuss it further at the August 28th meeting. Is everyone good with that?
And I'll circulate what I circulated before you guys, so you guys can have a look at. We already put forth the ideas, Dave, of how we see it changing. It doesn't include Mark's idea of the abandonment, but because we really concentrated on the probate part of it. But you'll be able to understand what we're looking for, the changes in the law to make it so when you have to go to court, it's really cut and dry.
Okay, then I think I missed it.
Okay. So Mark's going to recirculate the email to everybody and we can go further from there. So I think that's a good first step, putting a timeline on this policy committee. So first weeks of August for a meeting and then discussion at the August 28th meeting. If everyone's okay with that and doesn't have any, Mark Berkowitz, do you have any additional comments before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say what Miriam just said is really important. I mean, first of all, Miriam's a property manager. She oversees a number of communities, more than any of us here. And she really understands what where the industry is going, certainly in Connecticut. And this is a separate issue than the issue of abandonment and probate and whatnot, but something that it really should something that we should as a council be addressing, which is, promoting the industry and at least maintaining our housing stock in Connecticut, which is the aging infrastructure of the existing communities. That's something that we really should be concerned about. This is really where we should be focusing a lot of our energies on, not about how we can, like Miriam said, how we can find existing communities and whatnot, but how we can maintain the existing infrastructure in Connecticut and the existing parks. Because we're certainly not growing at a record pace here. I mean, since I've been involved in the industry, I could probably certainly name on one hand how many additional communities there have been in Connecticut, right, guys? Maybe 2, 3, 4 communities. I mean, the industry's not growing. So when we talk about promoting the industry, we need to, maintain what we certainly have, right? So with that being said, what are we doing about the aging infrastructure? Where are people going to get low interest loans if they have to update water lines, sewer lines? If they have to remove an abandoned home? I'm sure, DCP's coming through communities and seeing an abandoned home with skirting pillaged and everything else pillaged from a home because the community owner can't afford to put that home in a dumpster, which is going to cost them, $5,000, $7,000. It's easy for, somebody to say, well, you got to get rid of that home, but, and it's easy for people on the council to say, well, that's a cost of doing business, but it's expensive and not everybody can afford it. So those are the things that we could be talking about on this council and talking about how we can continue to improve the industry, how we can promote the industry so we can remove that home and bring in new homes. Those are the kind of things that we should be talking about on this council. And that's where I think I hear Miriam's frustration. But I think there's an opportunity here. And I think that's really what I'm hearing. Miriam's bringing up, there's an opportunity there to do things for the residents, because all these things really benefit the residents. If we improve the infrastructure of these communities, that benefits the residents. If we get rid of these older homes or someone that unfortunately passed away, or you have an abandoned home where we can remove, that benefits the residents. I have not seen in all my years how much the cost or the value of people's mobile homes have gone up over the last year or two. Right, Miriam, Mark, Marcia? Oh my goodness, what people are making on their homes. I mean, tenants should be thrilled how most of us are keeping up these communities. So let's focus on some of the positive things and how we can promote the industry and not spend, 10% of our meetings on how we can promote the industry, because I think there's real opportunities here for this council to do some good things for the industry and focus on some areas that could really, really help the mobile home industry in Connecticut. And we really need to preserve what we have. And I think there's the issue that Mark brought up, which I think is really important for the legislative committee to take care of. And what Miriam just brought up is a huge, huge issue in Connecticut. And I don't know how we address that as a council, but we should spend a meeting talking about the aging infrastructure of these communities and what we need to do. So.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yep.
All right, so Dave, you're next. I see you. Actually, Miriam, did you already see?
I think maybe I didn't take my name. I thank you, Mark. I just want to say one other thing, one other topic, okay, that is very difficult for us is our, every town is a different policy in Connecticut, right? Which makes it difficult to begin with. And what I think people of the council sometimes don't understand either, and I'm talking people who are not in management or ownership, is that our relationship as a community manager and the town is incredibly important to us. The tax collectors, nothing against tax collectors, but have typically make the business decision in just about every town I have, actually every town I have around the state, to not enforce the collection of property taxes, which is, does not help us one bit. And many times I've gotten calls from certain collectors and asking for my assistance in collecting property taxes, which thank God is not my job. But this is an issue that I would like to also at some point put on the table. It is a difficult issue for us. That park that I have, Dave, that you have visited, owes, I don't know if you know, owes over $350,000 in property taxes on the individual homes that folks have chosen not to pay over the years. And yet there is not one sort of enforcement issue against those homes. That doesn't help the community. Okay, just want to add that into the list of things I'd like us to kind of make people aware of, that it's not always just a very cut and dry situation. Thank you. I'm off.
Okay. Okay. So, I have Dave. You're up next, and we're running very low on time. So, I need everyone to kind of. We're good till 12, and I think, and let's keep it
9 minutes.
We got 9
All
minutes.
right,
You're up, Dave.
I'm pretty much in excuse me. I'm pretty much in agreement with the idea of finding ways to address infrastructure, and I'm certainly well aware from not so much where I live, but in the parks I've visited, that it's a big problem. It's a big problem across the country, and it is a big problem for the ownership because it costs a lot of money to do that. I thought I had forwarded some changes that were made by HUD, and it was sent to me because of my involvement in resident ownership. But the way I read it, I think it's possible that loans and funding could be available through community development block grants to existing ownership. I'm not sure of that. Did I not send that to you guys? Mark, did I send that to you? I can't hear you.
I believe you did.
So, I mean, the section starts on page 20. I'm not a lawyer or a legislator. You have to read it yourself. But the way I read it, I thought it was at least possible that could be used to try to, I think it has to go through a municipality or something. I don't know how it works, but it's something you guys should look into, and we should bring it up and find out if that's a viable option.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. I just checked the chat, and there's someone by the name of Robert Bailey that's left a message. Dave, I am here. Does that mean anything to anyone?
Bob Bailey is a guy, lives in in the RHP Park in Clinton. I wanted him to jump in. Is he in here?
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey, would you like to speak?
He did tell me that he might be in and out.
Okay. Well,
That
that
he
was
might
at
be.
11:51, so it was just a few minutes ago he was here. So if you get back, Mr. Bailey, just raise your hand. Anybody
would have
else?
been-
We have 6 minutes to go. Anyone else want to move on? I just want to head down the rest of the agenda so we can make this meeting complete. Item 7, it's new business. I don't have anything on the agenda. Committee reports, nothing on the agenda. Correspondence, nothing on the agenda. We've talked about emails. They'll be circulated for the next meeting. And before we end with an adjournment, Mr. Bailey, your hand is raised. You have the floor for 3 minutes. But we can't hear you. Okay.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Is this Mr.
Yeah,
Bailey?
it wouldn't let me.
Okay. All right, Mr.
Well, I
Bailey,
guess
you
it's
have
still-
3 minutes.
I guess it's still morning, so
Good morning.
good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just I don't have too much to say on this forum based on what I've heard. I got in here a little bit later than I wanted to, but I told Dave that I would be here just to hear what's going on. So at another meeting, I'd be able to speak more of in regards to the residents and the working with the ownership. Not necessarily at the local level, but the national level. So I don't want to take up that last 3 minutes with anything, because I see where the discussion was going with Miriam and Mark in regards to the penalties and the things for the homeowners. So I didn't want to step in and address that, what my opinion was at this time. But we do have a lot of things working and few things working in Clinton in regards to our park. And that's just one of many. So
Right.
I'll
Well,
leave
thank
it at
you,
that unless somebody's got a specific for me.
Nope. Okay. I
Thank you,
have,
Bob.
it's 11:56, folks, so we're getting close to a motion to adjourn. Last call for a minute comment. Otherwise, if someone would like to make that motion to adjourn, that'd be fabulous.
So moved. I moved to adjourn.
Marcia seconded it. All in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everybody. You'll be getting some emails from me. We'll have a policy committee meeting in August, and we'll meet again on August 28th. Everyone have a great summer until that time. Good night.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Elizabeth.
Good afternoon.
Dave, I'll call you.
Take care,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.